Hi, after my video all about greens, where I swatched and mixed all green colors and color combinations in my watercolor collection, I wanted to tackle other color groups as well. So today I'll talk a bit more in detail about purples, whether I use them for portrait or landscape paintings, flowers, backgrounds, or as a little pop of color. I use purple all the time, but I have no pre-mixed purple color on my main palette. That is because I mix all the purples I use in my paintings. So, how do we mix purple? When I first started with watercolors, I just typed into Google how to mix purple, and the answer is usually red and blue. But I find that answer is too simple, because color theory is a bit more complex than that. Thinking in terms of red, yellow and blue, we have to remember that not every red hue is the same. The simplest way to understand clean color mixing with watercolors is the split primary palette. Splitting the primaries red, yellow and blue into their respective cool and warm counterparts. So I picked a cool and a warm yellow, a warm and a cool red and a warm and a cool blue from my palette here. And the order of colors is not random, because you usually arrange the split primaries like this because a warm yellow and a warm red mix into bright oranges, a cool red and a warm blue mix into bright purples, and a cool blue and a cool yellow mix into very intense and bright greens, as you can see in my All About Greens video. Let's test that theory. I've picked a cool and a warm toned red, as well as a blue from my palette. PR means pigment red and PB means pigment blue. I've mixed every combination of those four, so I mixed the cool toned red and cool blue first, which does result in purple. The warm red and cool blue is barely recognizable as a purple. I would say it's more brownish. That is because those two are almost at opposite ends of the color wheel and start to neutralize each other. The cool red and warm blue combination yields the brightest purple of all these four, just like the color theory told us. And the warm red and warm blue results in a very muted dark purple. So to get the brightest, cleanest purple, it is best to use a cool red and a warm blue, or at least one of those two. However, most watercolor mixing palettes include PV19, pigment violet 19, or a similar pigment like magenta, as it acts as a cool red and yields very good and bright purple mixes with any blue, but especially with warm blues. Now I've tried to gather all my red pigments, violet pigments and a few selected blues to make this huge color chart to see all the purple color combinations I can get. I focused on cool toned reds, pigment violets and a few special colors to mix with different warm and cool toned blues, which some are transparent and some are granulating. First, we have Opera Pink or Brilliant Opera Rose, PR122, Pigment Red 122, which is a beautiful fluorescent pink. This color results in the brightest purple mixes by far, especially with warm blues like ultramarine. I've tried to mix every color combination in a gradient, adding more blue color from left to right. I forgot to add the blues on the color chart here, but added them later. Some of the blue pigments like cerulean blue, cobalt turquoise or solidite genuine are granulating, so the mixes are also granulating. Cobalt turquoise is slightly opaque, so it was a bit hard to mix with other colors. I love all the combinations of opera pink with any blue, but I found that the granulating mixes especially looked really cool with the fluorescent pigment shining through the mix. I would say that generally PV19 quinacridone rose behaves similar to the fluorescent opera pink, just that it isn't fluorescent. We get very bright mixes with warm blues like ultramarine, but the darker blues like PB60 mixed with PV19 also result in very lovely intense purples. Next up we have PR209 quinacridone coral, which we've already seen before. We get a very nice range of purples, but not as bright or intense as with Opera Pink or Quinacridone Rose PV19. My favorite mix is Quinacridone Coral with Phthalo Blue, which resulted in a very lovely red wine purple color. Ruby Red Deep PR264 is a dark, cool red, which I've included in my main mixing palette because it yields very nice maroonish or reddish wine purple colors. The mixes remind me of perylene violet, which is another pigment I added to this color chart later on. Now we have permanent carmine PV19, which is also pigment violet 19, but it's a bit darker and cooler than quinacridone rose. Both yield similar mixes, but with permanent carmine, the purples seem a bit more dark or muted than with the brighter quinacridone rose. Then we have magenta PV42, which is very close to the primary magenta in the CMY color model, so it yields very bright and intense purple color mixes with any blue. My favorite mix was definitely the granulating mix with PG50 cobalt turquoise and solidite genuine. Magenta is a staple in many watercolor mixing palettes and can be used instead of PV19 quinacridone rose as your primary pink. Quinacridone violet is another pigment violet PV19, but even darker and leaning more towards purple than the other two. Mixed with blue, it still has a nice range of purple, but not as bright as the others. From here, I also started to mix the pigments with a fluorescent opera pink and later also with a PV19 quinacridone rose to see how the colors look with a fluorescent shine underneath or shifted more towards pink. So this is the first page of the purple color mixing chart where we already have a very wide range of bright and intense as well as some more muted purple mixes. The fluorescent opera pink really stands out among all the purple mixes as they are very bright and intense. Personally, I was very surprised how well magenta worked, as I can't remember the last time I actually used it in a watercolor painting, because I mainly use quinacridone rose PV19 instead. Next up is Potter's Pink PR233, a very special and historic watercolor best known for its granular light pink color. It's very weak in tinting strength and a very faint color, but personally I think it's one of the most unique watercolors and it results in very nice mixes. Because it is heavily granulating, the mixes are granulating as well, with the Potter's Pink pigment separating and giving the mixture texture. I couldn't decide on a favorite mix here, because every combination is so unique and beautiful. But I want to mention that fluorescent opera pink and quinacridone rose mixed with Potter's Pink result in a very nice granulating bright pink color. Perylene violet is a deep reddish grape color, which I actually like using a lot. Mixed with the various blues here, we get a wide range of deep red wine grape colors. I never mixed perylene violet with granulating blues before, but it resulted in very lovely colors with a nice texture. Manganese violet PV16 is a granulating violet hue, which is one of my personal favorites. We get lovely purples with this, as the granulation effect of manganese violet is very even, as opposed to Potter's Pink, which tends to granulate a bit more irregular. Cerulean and manganese violet, which are both granulating, are absolutely stunning together. I wasn't sure whether I should include Daniel Smith's Rose of Ultramarine here as well, because it is a mix of PV19 and PV29 Ultramarine, which we already have swatched on this color chart. But I wanted to see how we can shift this mix with different blues as well. Another aspect is that the ultramarine I used for this color chart is Schminke's non-granulating ultramarine finest, whereas the ultramarine used in Daniel Smith's Rose of Ultramarine is granulating. So these mixes have a faint granular effect as well. Now, wisteria is the newest addition to my collection, and through my last video I already know it results in very nice mixes. But seeing them all here in one color chart showed me the range of mixes I can get with wisteria. Generally speaking, we get a more lilac hue when mixed with blue. Because wisteria has a white pigment in it, it was a bit more difficult to mix, especially with other opaque colors like cobalt turquoise. PV23 Carbazole Violet in the Anismuth line is already a very intense blue-purple color, so the mixes with blue will result in even deeper purples. At this point, it was a bit harder to gradually mix, as you can barely see the difference anymore. That's why I added the Opera Pink and quinacridone Rose at the bottom as well, to shift the violet not only towards blue but also towards pink. Lastly, I added ultramarine violet, which is, as the name suggests, a violet almost ultramarine color that is granulating and low in tinting strength, so it was a bit difficult to mix. As it is already very close to blue, it was hard to get any mixes here, but I promise I'm gradually mixing blue into the ultramarine violet. Mixed with opera pink and quinacridone rose yield very bright and intense purples, which through the ultramarine blue are slightly granulating. Well, and now I've finally swatched all my selected red, violet and blue pigments to make this huge purple color chart. I gotta say that I'm surprised to see this wide range of color, as well as some color combinations that I've never tried before. I hope that this may help you or was at least a bit interesting. I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to color mixing and researching pigments, and even though making big color charts like this is tedious work and takes up a lot of time, I really enjoy it, especially seeing the results like this. But as in the last video, I wanted to try these combinations out in a little portrait painting. I tried to include as many colors as possible, but because the combinations with opera pink, potter's pink, manganese violet and wisteria impressed me the most, I focused more on these. In the background, I tried to make a gradient from more dark and deeper purples to lighter shades. For the hair, I used perylene violet mixed with PV60 Delft blue to get this dark grape color. For the shadows in the face and on the skin, I used ultramarine violet. I really like how this portrait turned out, as I never just use one color group for a painting. Having this big purple color chart really helped me to see all the different mixes I can achieve with the few watercolor tubes that I have. It also made me realize I want to work more with special colors like potter's pink or manganese violet, or experiment more with the granulating mixes. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope that this kind of content was interesting and helpful to you. See you in the next video. Bye!